I want to start by explaining why this footage is so terrible. I couldn't get it running on my PC, my desktop computer. I tried for ages to get it going in a DOS emulator, it wouldn't work, so I've been able to get it running on a shitty old laptop with Windows XP, and I'm recording it with my phone. I'm sorry about the quality, but this is the only solution I've been able to find. Anyway, moving on. This game is called The Fight of the Sumo Hoppers. It was created by Tuomas Korpi. I might have pronounced that wrong, but forgive me if I have. It was made in around 1997. I didn't really start playing it until the early 2000s, 02, something like that. I only discovered it once I started university and I had access to the internet. I found it on this website called The Underdogs, which was about older games that had been forgotten. You can see it looks very simple, looks pretty shit basically, but it's a very deep game, and it might even be, I consider it one of the more realistic fighting games that I've played. The graphics don't look like this because it's a really old game. If you look at games from 1997, they're pretty damn sophisticated. This is just Spartan. It's minimalist. It's been reduced down to only the essential elements that you need to play the game. As you can probably tell, it's obviously a physics-based game. The characters are made up of 1 pixel wide lines, and all you can control is the leg on your character's side. They're permanently attached to each other, and the goal is to make your opponent's head touch the ground first. It also runs in DOS only. There are no other versions that I've found. There have been a couple of tributes to it. For example, Get on Top by Bennett Foddy. Bennett Foddy was the creator of QWOP and GURP, if you've seen those. Pretty famous web-based games. But his version is mechanically quite different, not really as deep as the original game, plays very differently. So you can see I'm not just a single crazy person. Bennett Foddy is also a fan. And there are many other game designers who think Sumo Hoppers is brilliant, including Lee Perry, who was the lead gameplay designer for Gears of War. Alright, so let's talk about why I think this is a brilliant game and one of the most realistic fighting games I've played. I think it's a great example of emergence in a game. Trying to think of a simple way to explain emergence. Basically, complex things arising out of a few simple things, a few simple elements. If you think of something like a fractal, with fractals, really complex patterns arise out of extremely simple formulas. If you look at something like the Mandelbrot set, I'll put the formula up on the screen. You can't look at the formula and say, okay, there's going to be this blobby shape in it. You can't imagine it, you can't draw it. It can't be predicted. It's too complicated. You just have to run the equation in a computer and see where it goes. So how does this apply to martial arts and the fight of the Sumo Hoppers? Well, much like when we look at an equation, we can't predict how the fractal is going to turn out in the end. You can't theorize in martial arts without testing it. There are so many elements, it's so physically complicated, things arise that you could never predict. But that's why sparring is so important. It's a test, and you're running the equation, you're running the simulation. Of course, it's real life, it's real fighting. How this is relevant to the fight of the Sumo Hoppers. Now, when Korpi was designing this, he had no idea what techniques people would be coming up with, and he was surprised how people were playing it, what they were doing. He never designed the attacks and feints and leg windmills and the crab-like jumping when you're upside down. None of that is programmed into the game. All that is programmed into the game is the physics. By the way, it's designed to be played by 2 players on sort of either side of the same keyboard. When you play against the AI, it gets very predictable. I tried to mix it up a bit, but it's not nearly as interesting as playing with a human. Some of you might be reminded of a game called Torabash, and you might think that maybe that's a little bit better than this. It's a good game, but it's very different. Because it's turn-based, that takes away the reflexes and the quick thinking that is required in an actual fight. Sumo Hoppers is about muscle memory and being able to instantaneously recognize a pattern and respond to it. Another way it resembles real martial arts is that you have to learn techniques by trial and error and constant repetition until you get it, and you can perform it without having to think. Also, you can watch other people play, and then you might try to learn techniques from someone else who you've seen performing something. They might try to teach you and lead you through it, and they demonstrate it, and then you go away and practice it and try to pull it off yourself. It's not like in, for example, Street Fighter, where a certain button combination triggers off this, say, a Hadouken. In Sumo Hoppers, you actually have to perform it in real time while the game is running this physics simulation. It's not a triggered event, it's this real-time technique that you perform. And all the other things are there in one way or another, in a simple form, like feints and trying to lead people into traps and lead them to do what you want so that you can win. And this is why I think, in a really abstract way, and abstract meaning to extract the essential elements from, that this is the most realistic fighting game that I know of. And only for those reasons. Everything else is practically non-existent. And the reason other people haven't really tried to make a game in this fashion is because this game is so simple that it works. This kind of emergent gameplay works. I'm really not sure how well this would work as a modern, fully fledged fighting sim. If someone tried to make this in a way that was a lot more realistic and you could control all the limbs or something like that, I don't really know how that would work. But still, this game is out there. You can download it. I might put a link in the description where you can get it. See if you can get it running on your computer with an emulator, or maybe you've got an older computer, and have a go. It's this classic, really interesting game that no one's heard of. And as I was saying before, it's influenced quite a few designers, but nothing plays quite like this.